Okay, so another day on the Mosley TA-53M. Got the front director on, got one of the driven elements on, and need to put on the second driven element in the reflector. So I'm going to try to do that today. A couple things that I learned along the way, which makes life so much easier, is Mosley's already done you a favor, and these markers also designate where the elements go, where the boom to mast clamp goes. I've measured it. They give you the measurements in the manual. From here to the blue is the exact measurement of what they're saying from tip of element to tip of element. So that works out well. Same thing here. There's a black stripe here. You can't see it now because it's fully covered. One thing I also learned, and maybe it was just me and my installation, never doing this before, there's a tube that goes inside of this tube for reinforcement. And the first time I did it, I just put this on first and thought, like the rest of the elements, there'd be a hole at the end and you would just screw in the next element. Well, that's not the case. This whole piece, which is all tore up, and there's a story why that is, it doesn't hurt the element, it's just the aluminum's a little scratched up. This slides all the way in, and then there's a hole that goes straight through both pieces for this U-clamp on both sides. Well, even though I use that, what is that stuff, the SS30, which you can see it's all over stuff, that stuff makes an absolute mess. So I'm going to try some, I'll show that in a minute, on the rest of the antenna. I've seen another guy on YouTube use some of this stuff that I got at Home Depot for a Mosley rebuild, and it seemed to work well too. So, because that stuff just gets everywhere, it's all over the clothes. I wore the same clothes to do this last 2 days because there's no sense in ruining more clothes, But anyways, what ended up happening was, you push the element in the piece through here, but the holes wouldn't line up, and it was like you just couldn't get it far enough. You could see, because that piece also had a black stripe on it, because this is a black, and you could see the black stripe through this hole, but you couldn't get it in, far enough. And I'm sitting there, and I have these little cheap workbenches that I bought online. They're like plastic. They're called like Works or something, and they have these little I can show them in a minute. But anyways, so what ended up happening is I'm using channel locks, and I'm gripping on here, and I'm using channel locks and gripping on to this side, and I'm trying to like twist this and get it to go forward. Well, you couldn't do that, so I ended up having to take a rubber mallet and just kind of pound the tip in a little bit to get it to go in the right way. And then it actually went just a tad bit too far. So long story short, then you had to sit there with the channel locks again and try to just pull it out just a little bit. So it's kind of a pain, and I'm not really looking forward to doing the reflector, if that's the case, which hopefully it's not, because these are very easy to assemble because it's driven. So you basically just assemble this and put the blocks on and stuff. Very simple to do this. It wouldn't be difficult if that wouldn't happen to me, but regardless, it's working. So there's no problems now. One other thing to keep in mind is Mosley specifies with your traps, you have certain colors. I gotta clean this all up. It's kind of that gold stuff's everywhere. I'm gonna take some rags and wipe it all down when I'm done. Not that it really matters, but it's going up in the air. It's gonna be exposed to all the winter elements and all the elements anyways. So they give you color codes, which you won't be able to see now because the colors always go that way and they're inside this tube. So what I ended up doing first was putting the wrong color code on first. The black, green, black was here. And then, I was left with the black, green ones. And I'm like, wait a minute, let me double check my work. And I had it backwards. So I had to take this off that was here, and this was on this side. So you got to do it the way they say, and that's just me probably spending too much time trying to work through troubles on that part, and then I was trying to get this element completed. So the main thing is to take your time. You may, obstacles you're always going to have a few challenges along the way, I guess, with anything that you put together. It's just what it is. If I would have had like a proper workbench with a vise and stuff, it probably would have been easier. But then again, with the vise, if you grip this stuff too hard, then you're going to deform the circular of the element. So I think what I used was probably the better way, and I'll show that now. So this is what I have. Basically, these are some cheap little workbenches, and I use these grips, you know, and they kind of, you can lock onto something and kind of hold it in place. So I had that whole element. Obviously, I put it out in the yard, so I had more room to work. But I had the whole element inside holding it, and then I used my channel locks to get it where I needed to go, plus a rubber mallet. So it worked, and I didn't deform the elements or anything like that. So that was the main thing I didn't want to do, is start hitting that with like a hammer on the end where you're going to deform the end of the element, because then you're basically screwed up the whole antenna in a lot of ways. So you don't want to do that. These have been exposed to being outside. They're all rusty and stuff. Probably should have maybe taken a little bit better care of these and kept them put away when I wasn't using them, but it is what it is. I'm sure if I needed to, I could replace these. But yeah, so that's where we are now. You know, got a halfway assembled antenna. Obviously, when I get it put together, I'm gonna have to push it up on that tripod some. It's quite heavy now. I can only imagine with 2 more full-size elements on there how much heavier it's gonna get. So that's gonna be a challenge in itself to get that pushed up. But I'm probably gonna end up removing that plate up there, take that completely off. I have to get on the step ladder, and I'm gonna try to get it up at least that high if I can. Kind of rethought some of my plans, possibly what I want to do, and quite possibly I might want to just take this stacked 4-element vertical 2-meter beam and have that put up on the rotatable mast up at the top, and then put my 2M9X below it, and then like I said, the Max 2000 at the very top of the pipe. I don't really think I need a 13B2 for vertical FM work. I think it's kind of overkill, so maybe I'll just hang on to that. Being up about 70 plus feet in the air, I'm sure that stacked 4-element will do me just fine. And probably I will have to not rotate the antenna as much, because it'll have a wider beam span, you know, looking out into, you know, distance repeaters and simplex and stuff. I'll have a wider coverage that way. The beam width will be a lot more, there'll be more width to it instead of a 13B2 where it's more narrow. So that's my thought on that. So again, we're just going to continue on today and see what happens. 73.